Jimmy learns about boundaries. Jimmy the elephant was no ordinary elephant. He loved dressing up in his green and purple shell suit, which shimmered in the sun, and a big, shiny gold chain that jingled when he walked. He even had a little cigar, though he never lit it. It just made him feel fancy. Jimmy was also very friendly. He had a long, wrinkly trunk that he used to greet everyone he met, especially children. He'd wave it around, tickle their noses, or pat them gently on the head. Most kids loved it and giggled with delight, but one sunny afternoon, something happened that made Jimmy stop and think. Jimmy was at the park, surrounded by children who were laughing and playing. He stretched out his trunk to pat a little boy on the shoulder, but the boy stepped back and said, "No, thank you, Jimmy. I don't like being touched." Jimmy tilted his big head. "Oh," he said, "but I was just being friendly." The boy smiled politely. "I know, Jimmy, but everyone feels differently about being touched. Some kids like it and some don't. It's always better to ask first." Jimmy's ears flapped as he thought about this. He looked around the park and realized he had never asked anyone if they liked being touched by his trunk. He just assumed they did because most kids laughed and played along. Later that day, Jimmy went to his wise friend, Mrs. Owl, who lived in a big tree near the river. "Mrs. Owl," he said, "I think I've made a mistake. I never asked if it was okay to touch the children with my trunk. How can I fix it?" Mrs. Owl adjusted her glasses and hooted softly. "Jimmy, it's good that you want to do better. It's important to respect everyone's boundaries. Before you use your trunk to touch someone, just ask them. A simple, 'Is it okay if I do this?' goes a long way." The next day, Jimmy went back to the park. When he saw a little girl playing with a ball, he gently asked, "Hi there. Is it okay if I give you a high five with my trunk?" The girl grinned and said, "Yes, please." Jimmy gave her a gentle high five, and they both laughed. But when another child said, "No, thank you," Jimmy smiled and said, "That's okay," and waved his trunk in the air instead. From that day on, Jimmy always asked first. And you know what? The children liked him even more because they knew he respected their feelings. Jimmy learned that being a good friend isn't just about being fun and friendly, it's also about listening and respecting others. And so, Jimmy and his green and purple shell suit became the most thoughtful elephant in town. The end.